Hello, friends and extended family. I wanted to do a video today just for, to kind of combine what I'm doing with what other people could do during this sort of apocalyptic, pandemic, mass insanity that we're all kind of stuck in worldwide right now. And today, during my bathroom time in the morning, bath and all that jazz, I excluded my phone and my lap and my iPad and my other phone that I check my media on, check my YouTube and all that jazz, and I took a book, which I get away from reading, and I should never get away from reading, and neither should you. But anyway, so I'm going to allot my morning time up until about 11:30 noon to be away from social media, to be away from screens, and spend some time in reading, which is spending time in my imagination, and spending time in my thoughts, and with sharing with other people's thoughts. Reading is incredibly healthy for your mental health, and I highly recommend it for all. That being said, that's also an admission that my addictive personality is in that direction with screens right now, which it certainly is, and I'm sure a lot of you probably suffer from this as well. Those of you who can claim to be off Facebook or Twitter or this, that, and the other thing, good for you. I managed to not get sucked into Twitter, and judging on what I hear about it, it sounds like that's a good thing. And I don't want to be involved. I don't want to go in there. Someone was asking about my Twitter handle. And certainly it's a way to, if I'm looking to, the key is to me marketing myself, which isn't very appealing to me, marketing in general. I don't care. I'm maybe a little bit harder to find, but at the same token, I feel like these huge Twitter, Facebook, Google, all these things have gotten way too powerful, way too out of control. My basic plan is to slowly start exiting my presence from Facebook, slowly start pulling out of YouTube, because these monopolies need to be taken down a few notches. And the way we do that is the people are what make them huge and powerful through their worship. They just need to pull out because you can see what's happening to people. They're getting radicalized and all sorts of things. So that's one thing, right? The other thing we can do during this time, whereas I've been isolated and sort of excluded from Canadian society and marketplace, my agency has been muted, basically, to the point where it's oppressive, but the government is not my master. They think they are, and they feel that they should have complete control over its citizens, and that saves them from doing any heavy thinking. But in this time that we're in, especially, we seem to be led by the least capable and those with the least merit. And these movements that are popping up are suggesting we accelerate that process by not looking at any merit, not looking at anything as valuable, and not looking at anything as more valuable than anything else. So total equality of the lowest common denominator, which is terrifying, because if you flesh that out and follow it to its conclusion, we can see that what about people who are catatonic? people who are conscious have a distinct advantage over the catatonic, wouldn't you say, in this reality? So perhaps we should have everyone unconscious, right? That's only fair to the catatonic. So, some of you less enlightened folks will sit there and go, that's ridiculous. Well, everything that's going on right now is quite ridiculous. And if you don't think it's ridiculous, then you are well on your way to that unconscious state, like the catatonic, that are completely unaware. Self-awareness is our our go-to right now. It's our defense system. Self-autonomy, self-awareness, knowing what's happening to us, what we are doing unconsciously, and why we're doing it unconsciously. Those are big things, and we need to get a handle on that. That requires a bit of psychological reading. It requires a bit of understanding of psychology. I personally recommend that if you can, find yourself a religion that you gravitate to, whether it be Buddhism or Islam or Judaism or Christianity or even some paganism, some mysticism, esotericism, something that meshes with you, which is a system of living that can provide you some sort of stability. Now, I personally don't recommend chop shopping, which is basically like, say I'm a Christian, and say I, like all the parts of my Christian community, but I feel that when my wife, I don't have a wife, but I feel when my wife disrespects me or has done something terrible, that I should be able to kill her or beat her. Well, that's not really very Christian of you. But there is honor killing in some other religions. So what I'm saying is, you can't sit here and follow a deity or a way of living or a system of living that's holistic, that takes everything into consideration and has a certain idea and outcome as its highest aspiration, whether that be to get to heaven or whatever, Shambhala, or whatever your sort of particular religion or your wants or needs, or what makes you feel like that's the goal you're striving for. That includes much psychology. Okay, so I've been going through the whole mental health thing, and to be honest, it's very play school, it's very kindergarten, the mental health system in Canada, and again, catering to the lowest common denominator. So it's very, they throw out a lot of very profound and insightful things like you might get from Jung, and focus on very basic stuff. And then they come up with these systems like cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy and things like that, which are basically extracting religious practices to help people's psychology, and acting as if they've come up with this on their own. There's nothing new under the sun. Okay, if you look, you can find anything. You can find any information you're looking for. And what you hopefully through a very intensive and robust search of self and meaning and metaphysical investigation, what you're going to discover ultimately is that there is nothing new under the sun. and that people have been involved in this sort of exercises and thinking and whatnot for forever, very, very long time, to the point where time is irrelevant, right? So we have to reach beyond time, beyond space, beyond matter, to get to the abstract, where we find eternal truths and the ideas of immortality and things like that, and ultimately getting to true value, right? Beyond our very I think static is our very short-lived pleasures and pains, to things that we want to aspire to and to come to understand. And and we have to look everywhere, right? We have to look holistically. We've been sort of specialized, and that creates a sort of handicap for the average human in trying to understand themselves holistically, right? If they're only one small part of a larger society and their focus is all there, well, how can they be expected to understand what's going on in other areas and other parts of that society? And especially when we are promoting narcissism and selfishness, entitlement, and all sorts of very bad ways of being. The other thing I wanted to suggest in not only working on our mental health and our psychological health is just coming to understand right and wrong for ourselves. I was born in '74, and since then I can certainly look and see the changing landscape of right and wrong. And we go along and we draw our lines in the sand and we cross them, and back and forth we go. And ultimately what we end up with, if we look back, is a very, I mean, I can only imagine another 50 years from the time I started to the time I finish. Basic morality will have done a complete 180, as we can see it unfolding today. And I don't believe that to be truth. I believe that my truth was dictated because I refused to take responsibility for my truth. Maybe not that I refused to take responsibility, but that perhaps the responsibility of knowing myself had been so corrupted through adoption that to survive, I didn't feel I had much choice but to try to go along to get along. And ultimately, I did have other choices. I could have died. I could have run away. I could have killed myself. So when I say died, I meant kill myself. So those were choices I had, to not go along with what didn't feel quite right and to end it. But when you keep a child in ignorance of more spiritual and psychological matters, and that's what we seem to be doing in the secular atheist sort of society, well, it's pretty hard to blame the child sometimes for their poor behaviors or poor thinking. But at the end of the day, I can look back on my life and think to myself, I should have known. And I give myself a break occasionally. I go, no, there's no way you could have unraveled this. You're still trying to unravel it. I'm still trying to unravel it. So it's very complex, and drinking helped me forget about it. Drugs helped me move forward. So I guess that's what I did. And, I got to a place where I could survive. I'm now, like I said, for the last 6 years, sort of excluded from society. And now you all in your lockdowns, except for, the hypocritical tyrants, are in the same boat. So, that being said, what can we do about that? Well, you've obviously realized that there's a polarized situation happening, and one side thinks the other is evil, and the other side thinks the other is evil, etc. I don't believe that to be the case. I believe both sides are being highly manipulated by a third party, and possibly other parties above and beyond that, beyond my pay scale. And I'm not going to make any apologies about the fact I don't have all the answers. The amount I don't know grows exponentially. And the more I uncover and the more I research and more understandings I take on, the more there is to research, the more there is to try to understand. And that leads you almost to a state whereas eternal life is now something you would want. I mean, the average person sitting around wishing they were a vampire in a very shallow, limited perspective really hasn't thought out the pitfalls of eternal mundaneness. Um, and unless you've chosen to undergo the process of understanding oneself and knowing oneself and psychoanalyzing oneself and really getting at the crux of what you are and the mystery behind that, and have only taken at face value what those around you have passed on to you, which is usually incorrect. I'm guessing you have a 90% of that, of incorrect information being passed on to you, and gaining the discernment to eventually question that information is rare. At certain points in my game plan, it was to just try to keep going forward with a roof over my head and just to drink my pain away, as a tool to function, as a self medication, really. But that's pathetic and sad. Yet, if someone in that situation, my situation years ago, had gone to their doctor and they said, "Oh well, it's social anxiety and depression," which technically that's what I've got. In that they would give you stimulants for your well, for the ADD that I've got, they give you stimulants. For the depression, they give you SSRIs, antidepressants, and for the social anxiety, they're going to give you depressants. So they just give you the pill form of what you've been doing subconsciously with things you were never taught were drugs. Right? Drugs were those things that fried your egg in a frying pan. Right? So marijuana. It's a little ironic looking back on that with alcohol versus marijuana and the destructive forces, and they're saying that that's going to fry your brain and destroy you, versus alcohol, which has the ability to cause memory loss, has the ability to cause psychosis, has the ability to absolutely destroy people and to change their way of being and to immoralize them. Yeah, and it's normalized into our society, without any sort of restrictions or forewarnings. And when people are desperately sick from it, we pretend it's not happening and ignore it. Oh, Uncle Joe is, he just drinks a lot as he's putting back his, starting on his second 60-pounder for the day. We watch someone absolutely killing themselves and pretend it's okay. No, it's fine. It's not illegal. There's nothing wrong with him sitting there killing himself in front of us, shitting and pissing himself. It's okay. So anyways, what can we do about that? Well, we can look around and we can say, okay, well, I don't understand. We can start to separate. But ultimately, that's a shifting landscape, and it's a fool's errand. We need to establish for ourselves right and wrong in a very clinical sort of way, right? So we look at our life, we evaluate what we're doing. How much TV am I watching? 16 hours a day? Is that healthy? No. Okay, we're doing something wrong. Okay, I'm smoking cigarettes. Is that healthy? Is it helping me? Okay, maybe it may provide something. Is quitting going to help me? It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt me. It's going to probably make me go wacky, and I might lose some friends. But is it a good thing I'm involved in? No, it's a bad thing. Okay, so we can establish those sorts of things, right? Then we can look into the Bible. We can look at the Ten Commandments, and we can establish if those are right or wrong for us. But we need to look at them and really play them out and say, is this what I want? Does this jive with the world I want to live in? So if the world you want to live in is, say, with families and love and caring and all those things, well then, is family destruction in your reality? Is that good or a bad thing? And if something contributes to family destruction, is that a good or a bad thing? So when we monetize people not being in families, right? So when a family breaks up, somebody gets some money. We monetize that. Then what do we get? We get the destruction of families more and more. Is that a good or a bad thing? So maybe you are a communist. Maybe you see family life is disgusting, and you think everyone should live in their own private cell, and everyone should distrust everyone else, and maybe that's what you believe, because family life leads to someone feeling bad that they have maybe a sexual proclivity that doesn't allow for family, or whatever it may be. But either way, you need to decide for you right or wrong. And once you have that locked in and set, now, absolutely, you want to be open to new information so you can make those adjustments. So just like in AA, right, they say the newcomer is the most important person. Well, why is that? Well, that's because as alcoholics, they were out in the community. They were out participating in activities and whatnot. And to continue to participate and in that area of what was going on, they needed to drink more and more amounts of alcohol, because whatever it was they were doing caused their body to have anxiety. That's sort of how alcoholism works. But what if those people were acting immorally to such a point that you needed to black yourself out to continue to participate? Okay, well, your body there is telling you there's a big problem. But with Alcoholics Anonymous, you then go into a room and with other alcoholics, and you don't participate in that area anymore. So you don't really know what's going on out there. So why is the newcomer the most important person? Because they come in, and they keep coming in. And sometimes they keep coming in more and more numbers, because what's going on out there is getting worse and worse. And these people are coming and telling you about the new worse and worse. And from that information, you can now continue to establish your boundaries and how to protect yourself from this sort of behavior that you don't want to continue to participate in anymore. So I guess what I'm going to be doing over the next while with my videos is slowly sort of transforming from a strictly adoption advocate. Adoption is a great place to start from, because there's so much self-oppression, right? The self is completely changed and oppressed completely from its historical and from its origins and its where it's come from, right? The self is completely cut off from everything it's attached to. and all its categories that it came from. So it's an amazing place to start from, and that's where I did start from, and that's what I'm moving my way from, to something new, something different, to become someone different, to become my potential, to reach for my potential, right? While accepting that my physiology, my mental process, and whatnot have been semi corrupted through interference in psychological childhood development, which is okay. That's okay. That those things have certain effects, and overcoming them creates new strength. Right? So everything can be okay. There can be positives in every which way, shape, or form. So this time on your own, separate from people, it's time to get to know you. You are the person that, the most important person in your universe, and probably the person you know least of all, truly. And when you stop, and the stops thoughts, the thoughts stop, it's hard to sit there with this person, because who are you? It's an amazing mystery. And most of us don't open that book, but we can, and we should. And there's no better time to open that book than right now, because we're in a very dangerous situation in this reality. We are surrounded by unknowns. Surrounded by unknowns. And there's chaos. Now, for me, I seem quite relaxed. Well, that's my natural state of being. Unknowns and chaos. So for me, I'm quite at home in all this. But that being said, I still have to be vigilant. I have to realize that if I just, fall into a depression and I'll just watch YouTube these couple days, and it becomes a habit, and I'm led off, and I become unaware, and chaos and unknowns sneak up on me, club me over the head. And sometimes that's what we need to be clubbed over the head. Sometimes we need to be shaken, the gift of tragedy. And it is a gift. There are gifts. There's always positives and negatives. There's always the shifting pendulum. All these things. Anyways, one thing that we could do for ourselves is bring things in. So bring your things of value closer to you. So figure out who is important physically in your life, who is a physical person, who you've developed online communities. How do you get closer to those people? We have to quit relying on the outside world for everything, right? How many of you ever went downtown and helped someone down on their luck, versus how many of you sent $10 over to starving children in some country? Right? What are you doing? You're giving money to the TV instead of giving money to your reality that is part of you and what you do and where you go. So when you see your reality falling apart around you, and the people on TV all living in multi-billion-dollar lifestyles, combined, well, why is that? Where have you sent your value? You've sent your value off to TV land. Oh no, but I was helping a charity from the TV. If your society and community is falling apart around you, it's because you've given away your powers, all of them, to the TV. So and the banks and the this and the that and the government and etc. Take your money back. Take your wealth, put it under your pillow, but take it out of the money, the paper. That isn't wealth. That's someone else's. That's an IOU from someone you don't trust. If you trust your government, you should give your head a shake. If you trust the banks, give your head a shake. So that's something you can do. Take back your wealth. If you hate Walmart, strike a blow. Don't walk in their doors. If you hate Amazon, strike a blow. Don't order anything from their website. Cut materialism out of your life. You know, why is China a superpower now threatening the rest of the world? How many things do you have in your house that say made in China? How many jobs went overseas? You can see how these things happen, but everyone does it. Stop saying that. You make your stand. And if you make your stand, just like the guy wanting to move a mountain so he can get to town easier instead of walking all the way around, and you know his children and his children's children and people in his community would have a shorter trek. Well, is he going to be able to move that mountain and appreciate the fruits of his labor? No. One man can't just move a mountain. But if it's a worthwhile venture and goal, then the powers that be and the powers of righteousness and goodness will gather to assist. So when he starts that venture and then he gets his children involved and his children's children potentially, and they make a commitment to this worthwhile venture, maybe the other people in the community get involved, and maybe, people start thinking of better and ingenious ways of moving the mountain, and you have progress and you have innovation, etc. This is how these great things come to be. Other times in our life, you heard things like, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. What happened to that saying? You don't fear enough. You should be more afraid. Wear a mask. Put yourself in a bubble. Get a body condom, etc. Be more afraid. Are these people telling you something that you should be listening to? No. No, they're not. They're trying to rile up your physiology. They're trying to rile up the animal in you and get it all fight or flight. So it's common sense that will prevail. It's humility in accepting how much you don't know. Because if you want to be really smart, then you'll get on the path of knowing less and less and less, and being aware of your ignorance more and more and more. And mine. I mean, like sit around like Socrates. Just sit around and think about it. One of the greatest thinkers of our time. Astounded at how much he doesn't know. And I think, being one of the smartest, I think he even said, my only thing I know is how much I don't know, or what was it? I know nothing, or whatever it may be, but in knowing nothing, that's knowing something as well. So there's all sorts of ways of breaking ourselves out of our dogma and seeing the true values in things, in understanding our own selves and what's right and wrong for us. Not based on selfish, fleeting pleasures or avoiding minor pains, but in true I'll have to think about the word I'm looking for in that. In true something. And that's something I have to reach into the unknown for. So I'll leave it on that, and hopefully that gives us some things to think about, and hopefully this is how we were, I guess this is how we're communicating for a while, but hopefully we can get some good growth down and make some good strides for ourselves in these uncertain apocalyptical times.